Hello, everyone. Good afternoon and then good evening. Thank you so much for joining us today for our Build for Impact webinar from Excel to AI Building Nonprofit Data System. I am Vishwa. I lead marketing at EdZola. We are really excited to have you all here. For those of you who are meeting us for the first time, a quick rundown about what we do at EdZola. We work with nonprofits and social impact organizations to build digital systems. Over the past 5 years, we worked with over 100 plus organizations across globe, building more than 150 systems. So we understand the realities of field operations because we live them. Before we go further, a quick word about our Bill for Impact initiative. This is how we give back to the nonprofit community, a way of sharing what we have learned with the wider sector. Parthiban will share more about this towards the end of the session, so stay tuned for that as well. And then let me quickly walk you through how today's session will work. Just a few ground rules, keep things smoother. First, react freely. If something resonates, hit the thumbs up or clap emojis. If doesn't match your experience, a thumbs down or thinking phases is just a welcome, and we want honest engagement here. And then second, use the chat. Drop your thoughts, questions, or examples as we go. We'll pick some up live at address others at the end. Third, please rename yourself on Zoom to your name and organization so we know who's in the room. And then we got 123 plus registration, so will you know that who are all in this session. It will be very helpful for us. And then fourth, stay on mute please. It keeps things smooth for the larger group, and we'll open it up when needed. And then quick note, AI note takers will be removed for your information. And then finally, QA will be at the end. We'll reserve dedicated time for that, as well as if you have any questions in between the session, you can drop them in chat as well as. Um, yeah, I'll hand over it to Akshay.
Thanks, Vishwa. I hope I'm audible. If I'm audible, just give me a thumbs up.
Yes, audible, Akshay.
Perfect. Hey everyone, good evening. My name is Akshay, and I founded the organization EdZola, where we work with nonprofits, and for the last 5 years. And thank you so much, Vishwa, for the brief rundown of what we do as well. Um, a quick note. So I think we have a session today on a framework that we are presenting on building data systems, which will cover around 45 minutes. And then I will hand it over to Parthiban from my team, who will give like a 5 minute quick summary of what we're doing at Build for Impact, what is our vision, etc. And then we'll be, like wrapping this up with Q&A. So that's pretty much. And I think since like we were honestly overwhelmed with the registrations received as well. Do keep I think we want to, create as much value as we can through this webinar. So if there's any questions or if you resonate with any of the problem statements, do react and do participate. So yeah, I think I'll just go over to my webinar now. So the topic for today is, how do you move from Excel to AI? And AI is so fast moving and so progressing so fast that we need AI in all the work aspects that we do. But are we really ready for it, right? Is the M&E and data teams or program teams, are we really ready for AI? And we thought of giving like a quick uh, framework or a perspective to think about, because we've built over 100 data systems for nonprofits in the monitoring, impact, and measurement space. And we think it's important that organizations think of this at stages. And so that's what this webinar is going to be all about. Um, so what this session is about, it's not going to be a specific AI for nonprofits talk or demo of a tool or a list of softwares to buy or a promise that AI fixes everything. What it is definitely is a simple framework to think how nonprofits can think about data systems. One practical walkthrough of how that journey looks like, and some action items like one is great, two is better, and three takeaways would be excellent. But I think having, like 1 to 3 takeaways for you is something that we envision, right? Um, so with that, I'm just going to, request Vishwa to launch our first poll. It'll be good to know what stage the organizations are in. So I think Vishwa, if you can just quickly
Yeah,
launch.
I launched. Yeah.
Thank you. So
Everyone now able to view the poll now.
yes. So the
Yes,
question,
okay.
which statement describes how your organization currently manages data, right? Is it spreadsheets plus some tools, a structured system, or it varies across team, or if you're unsure, you can give yours, right? Sorry. So, okay, we have participation. Okay, great. Okay. So we have participation from more than 65 percentage. We'll just give it like 10 to 20 more seconds for people to just um, give their preference. Okay. Awesome. So I'm just gonna end the poll in like a second or so. Um, yes. So I've shared the result to back at you, right? And overwhelmingly majority of organizations, right? More than 50, 60 percentage of them are still in the spreadsheet era, or, or using some kind of tools to collect data, right? And I think most M&E teams, I think it's also the financial year end. So I'm assuming most of them also are drowning in a bunch of Excel sheets, right? So I think that's the reality with most of us in the room face. And with that, I think I'm just going to, I think that's the messy reality today, right? The one, I hope my screen is visible, where the messy reality is that nonprofit, the starting point is not AI, right? The starting point is the chaos and not having a single source of truth, right? So there is data across different spreadsheets, etc., right? And I'm going to read some statements, and if that resonates with you, just give me like a thumbs up or like a clap so that I know how many of you resonate with this, right? I think is your program data lives across different sheets, different forms, different WhatsApp messages, different inboxes, this thing, right? So do give me a, yeah, I can see the thumbs ups coming in. Um, your team spend at least a week in collating quarterly reports, or like in merging files, and or in collating information. um, you're collecting data all the time, but still you feel that that data is not being incorporated in decision making, or like or the field teams don't have access to that data. The decisions still feel so slow, right? Give me a thumbs up if you agree, disagree. And lastly, right, AI sounds exciting, but also the reality is that the foundation is not really ready, right? We're not ready for AI yet. But by the hope, or my hope is, like by the end of the session, organizations will get some structure or framework to think about AI, right? So moving on, I think at EdZola, and also, right, I think before I move on, I think so version final, actual final dot XLS is not actually a data system, right? I don't know how many now we of us have such versions of Excel files as well. Um, so um, moving ahead, um, At EdZola, right, one of the unique privileges we've had is to build data system for over 100 nonprofits. And seeing this, right, I think we've seen a lot of failure case studies as well, right? So because people come to us for building MIS systems or building CRM systems or building AI systems, but there have been cases where some of the systems have failed, right? And it is with that, I think it is a privilege or a, like a experience for us to learn from these organizations so that we're able to share these learnings with all of you as well. But I think there are categories of these, like failures, right? And some of those failures is what I'm going to talk about now in this slide, right? So first is data collection without purpose, right? So we build forms, we build trackers without knowing, having clarity on what data do we need and why do we need that data, right? Either there is under collection or there's over collection of data sometimes, or like repetitive information being collected, right? Like why do I have to fill the same information for every form that I am rolling out, right? So simple things like that, right? So data, right? Similarly, a tool is chosen before the problem really is understood, right? There is organizations are too quick to, like onboard to a software saying, hey, let's use this software, let's use a service CTO, or let's use a Kobo before actually sitting down to talk really on what software those do we need, right? I think that is also one common mistake or a jump that organizations do. In fact, 80% of the time we ask organizations to, rework on their process and their data points before even like implement a technology tool, right? The next is process confusion getting digitized, right? So lack of clarity in process, where if the organization is not clear on what is the process that they follow, what happens is technology magnifies the inefficiency, right? So the it will amplify or it will bring that inefficient process to visibility, thereby like going back and forth on changing how the process works, right? And another thing is like thinking of a data system as a tool to report to donors and not for the teams, right? A lot of organizations even today like are working with donor pressure, quarterly reporting, fund utilization, etc., etc., and it is driven by that. Whereas where a data really is served is the frontline staff or the program teams or the managers and so on, right? And that is, I think, has been one of our things where if the data or the data system is designed for the donor or the compliance, often people don't see purpose in filling them, right? So sometimes it leads to low quality data or adoption issues, etc. And if you're able to resonate with these problem statements, do give me a thumbs up so that I know if it's relatable, right? And lastly, I think onboarding or going live with a technology tool or a platform, right? Or putting a form is treated as a finish line, right? Like go live treated as finish line, whereas adoption requires, like I think that is just a step one, right? I think often we tell our teams as well that going live with the system is just step one, because next is them using it, and next is us improving the system iteratively and then collecting feedback and then like improving. So I think that's often the feedback loop which gets missed as well, right? And in fact, I was talking to a very large nonprofit recently, and it's a 1,000+ team members organization running pan India programs. And one of the challenges was similar, right? And I had asked them, how often does your tech team actually go and visit the field? And turns out they did not have that feedback loop, right? And because of that, there is silos, there is versions of Excel files operating in different state programs or different district programs, right? And the last is, again, AI being added before the foundation is ready. And what AI does is, AI, just like any other technology, it just amplifies the noise, because there is noise at the source, noise at, like low quality data at the source level. It magnifies the noise as well. So that is also becomes a bit problematic, right? This is what we've seen. And what we, based on what we have seen in the organizations, we think organization through should go through like a structured phase. And what that phase is what we call as the map, right? So in my next slide is, like I think like most organizations skip straight to AI, but I think the ones that really succeed take it stage by stage, right? And we're calling it the map framework, and it is model, align, and then power with AI, right? So I think this is the journey that we want organizations to take. And what do we really mean by this, right? Is M is for model, where, like modeling what kind of data, what kind of decisions are important, and really having clarity before even you think of a tool or a technology, right? I think starting with what decisions matter, why is it important, what data is supposed to be collected, and also building that clarity before you build is really helpful for nonprofits to then think of, hey, what do I do want now that I know what I want? How do I do it, right? So that comes the next stage, which is the alignment phase, right? Align. So once you know what you want, and then you build the system, right? So you have a system, you have one source of truth, and the organization actually uses it, right? And here I'm not talking about a very complex system, right? Even a Google form or a Google sheet is still a system, but it is a system which follows a certain method, and there is certain method to the madness, right? So I think when we think of systems, usually we complicate, thinking that, like it should be only for the bigger ERPs. While that is true, it is even common for smaller organizations. With the Google sheet also is a system, right? Having a single source of truth for data, where your data is not repeated and you can actually trust an organization actually using it, right? And then we have power with AI, where you can then make sure that AI is useful, where you automate, you bring in insight, and you really can derive intelligence from whatever data that you're already collecting, right? So now I'm going to describe each of that stage by stage. And if you have any questions during this time, just feel free to put it in the chat as well. I'll answer all these questions towards the end, right? So first is model, right? So model really is what starts with theory of change, right? So every organization has a theory of change or a logic framework through which they are creating an impact, right? And I'm sure most of you here as well are from monitoring and evaluation space, so you know what theory of change is. But if you are not, I'll be happy to share resources after this as well. So theory of change is, what and how are we creating an impact, right? So once we know how we are creating an impact, then we have, sorry, then we know how the model is working, right? So the theory of change will come alive when we have data indicators, what signals tell us whether it is working, right? So these are called indicators of progress or indicator metrics that will show us, improvements, right? Like for example, let's say the goal of my nonprofit is, every child in school and is in learning, then attendance and assessment becomes like a thing, right? So that is one metric, right? So attendance and assessment becomes like a thing, right? So that is one metric, right? So I'll track attendance, I'll track assessment, I'll track baseline, inline, and so on and so forth, right? Next is mapping the data points, right? So once you know what data to be captured, then across stages, right? Like when do you capture that data? How often do you capture that data? Right, becomes very crucial for a nonprofit, right? And then thinking of it as entities and relationships and not just forms, right? Like for example, if there is a student and they are attending attendance, like then a student will, like probably have a daily attendance, which means around 20 days, and then they'll have assessment, which is like 3 times in a year or 4 times in a year, and they will have this thing, right? So thinking of them as relationships also will be helpful for organizations to uh, um, have that data model in place, right? And lastly, I think connecting each data point to a real decision or a review moment, right? I think that is where organizations miss out, where, collecting data, like really asking questions on, hey, why is this data important for me? And what am I going to do with that data, right? Either it is an indicator for progress or an indicator for a review to know whether it's working, or it's a feedback loop. And defining that is very important for organizations to have that in place, right? So that's something that we think is very important. And so, yeah, I think these are the things to be, mindful when we are going through the map phase. So, which is theory of change, indicators, data points, and review cadence and decisions. Now, I'm just moving on to the Next slide. Okay. So, and here also, right, even in this stage, AI can help you refine, right? Like, for example, if you have your theory of change ready, you can probably ask it to a Claude or a chat GPT, asking, hey, is there something that I'm missing? This is the data I want. Am I capturing the right information, right? AI can be a co-pilot here in, assisting me with what I want to know, right? And I think that is something that AI can help. Whereas, like, don't use AI as a first step, right? Don't ask AI to prepare your theory of change, right? Ask AI to, kind of review, kind of give feedback, or kind of, act like a thought partner, but never ask AI to decide, hey, how should I create an impact? Or, like, hey, can you create a theory of change for my organization, right? That never works. So how does this look like, right? Like in practice, in templates, things like that, right? Like, I'll take the example of a simple Kenyan nonprofit, like a skilling on livelihood nonprofit. I know a lot of nonprofits here work on livelihood, where this is a simple program, training program provides, vocational and apprenticeship and then job placement, right? And here, if you see, their activities are community outreach, delivering training, and facilitating apprenticeships, right? And then outputs are basically what their targets are, which is 5,000 youth in vocational training, and then certificates and apprenticeship and employment, right? And outcomes become, like they get increased income, they get jobs, and they get placement, and impact then by becomes, reduction in youth employment in Kenya. So this is the theory of change. And now, how does theory of change, like the data model look like for this, right? So I have a sample for that where, like across different, like if you see on the top, right? So how the beneficiary will flow, right? So it starts with beneficiary, then they'll be enrollment process will happen to a training batch, and then placement will happen, and then follow-up will happen. And employers are linked to placements, trainers are linked to batches, right? So this is how I think the typical entity hierarchy will go. And what do I mean by entity, right? Entities are different process or different touch points in your program, right? Beneficiaries, enrollment, training batch, placement, follow up, all of these are entities, right? And here, if you see the beneficiary entity, right, which is like the first core module or the core data, right, is you define what data you want to collect, right? Is name, date of birth, gender, country, phone number, education level, and so on. And you collect what kind of data that is, right? And in some cases, you can define what is a one-to-one relationship, what is a one-to-many relationship. So you know how the data is connected. And also you can add a description where you really know how or why this data is important. For example, here, if you see there is a checkbox for disability status, this is basically for inclusion tracking, right? So this nonprofit has like a inclusion tracking that they want to do. So which means that data is important. If I'm not working on people with disabilities, so do I really need the checkpoint? Is something that organizations can ask, right? So all of these data will add value at a later point, and that's how you create like a data model in place, right? So this is the first stage. And I think if I can get the rough show of hands, right? How many organizations here have done an exercise like this and have a data model in place, something in a Google Sheet, etc.? If you can just give me a thumbs up, that'll be really great. Think or a thumbs down also if you don't have, right? Yeah, we have a few who's already done that. I think great, right? So this is something that we've seen organizations do it as well. So next becomes the align, right? Aligning, like having like a system and a single source of truth where data that flows both ways, right? And what do I mean by that, right? So so first is, like having one trusted source, right? Having 10 different versions of impact files or 10 different spreadsheets which all says, Q4 final impact report is not a source of truth, right? And similarly, if your field officers and your program officers and your donors are seeing different versions of sheet, that is also again a different sources of truth, right? So I think one trusted source is a characteristic of a a data system, right? And like just like how I said, right? So data entered once, used for field review and management and donor reporting, everything all in once, right? So if I am a field officer, I will update the data and I will see the data of the people I enrolled, people I trained, people I got them placements, etc. Right? But let's say I'm a district or a state level manager, right? And as a state level manager, I can see the trainees, or I can see the program managers under each districts, how they are doing, and the data is automatically cascaded or segregated based on how they want to see it, right? And similarly, at a donor level, you can, like usually donors are tagged to projects or, like at a certain state, etc. as well. So you filter donor wise reports as well, right? But it is the same source of truth that is sliced and diced for different views rather than trying to reinvent the wheel in creating different copies of spreadsheets, right? Um, and this is surprisingly, like very common in organizations where, like a field officer or a field user is used to collect the data, but very rarely do the data goes back to them, right? So how often does data, what they are filling, is going back to the people who are actually filling, right? And how, and at every level, right? Like how often does it flow back to operations? How often does it flow back to strategy? How often does it flow back to the user and ask their feedback, right? So I think decisions and feedback loop is something that often gets missed out. And the last is, I think, designing for the real user in field, right? Not the ideal user at head office. And what do I mean by this? I think is, our users mostly work with constraints, right? Constraints as in it could be, lack of internet connectivity, or, like lack of device, right? You need the applications to work in, let's say, a mobile phone, right? Or in areas where there's no internet, or in areas where there is only Hindi access, right? Like, or like, or Tamil or Malayalam, right? Like based on where the field is, right? Things like that, where you design for the real user in mind, and real user in field, and not for the ideal user, right? So having a user first approach or a human centered design will actually improve the quality of the system. And adoption is again a social process, right? Not just a technical process, where every time you actually, kind of find ways to improve the adoption, ask for feedback, and see how better, like this whole system can do, so that it is operationally efficient, everyone in the organization is aligned with impact, and so on and so forth. So that's about align. And so before aligned, right? Like if you see donor, like what typically happens is, before there is like separate program data and donor data, there is field entry that never returns, or reports being rebuilt from scratch monthly, right? But after align, every entry or one entry for the record, and it is the same entry that is viewed by field manager leadership, but cascaded to the level of hierarchy they have in the organization, right? Similarly, field teams see who they need to follow up or what their input metrics are, and they're able to take decisive actions after that, rather than waiting for their managers or like superiors to tell them, right? And donor reports in minutes, not days, right? So because at the end of the day, donor wants to know what impact is being created. So it basically then becomes like a version of Excel file that you can just extract in minutes, not days. So that's typically how we've seen aligned work, right? And how does that work, right? And here's a small, I think, video where, like you create processes and you define what are the data points, what are the automations, what are the permissions, what is the, like edge cases that need to be handled, right? And you can, like define all of these in a clear structured document, right? So you can, so this is where the data is also linked, right? So the data model that we did previously will be helpful here, and also defining dashboards, which the key questions will be answered, right? So every dashboard should critically answer a few key questions, right? And that is what a purpose of a dashboard is, where every dashboard has a certain key question it answers to and caters to a specific stakeholder. So one dashboard is only, like designed for one audience. If it's for a donor, then it's only for a donor, right? The same dashboard cannot be used by, let's say, a program officer or a program manager, right? But the ones designed for program teams is only for the program teams, right? So I think that is one. I think, yes, I think, can we stop the annotation? One second. Can we see straight away to erase this? Okay, awesome. So that's one way of designing the system as well, right? Having the align and like designing dashboards and systems which will have processes, relationship with the entities, and then like having automation on it, right? So now we are done with it, right? I think now we are done with it, and next comes AI, right? So I think so next stage is really where AI comes in. Just go to the next slide, sorry. Okay, right. So where does AI really help, right? So now that you know what you want and what are the process in your organization, AI can be help you to achieve your goal faster, right? So one is collect faster, right? I think with AI you can run like you can do voice AI calls where you can run, like if you're doing a telecalling operation where you're collecting data from trainees who are attending placements, and you want to measure their 3 month 6 month retention rate, you can do probably try with an AI voice call, right? Or you can probably use AI to translate to run multilingual surveys in like no time, right? Or you could do assisted surveys where people can ask questions and answer, right? So data collection really becomes faster, right? And um, second is build faster, right? With the rise of I think one of the things that is really, like made possible is, the ability to, like create faster or quicker application, right? I think, like code assistance or form generation or, like generating work, like workflows, automation, etc., where you're really not dependent on like a technology team to, like build small prototype, right? So building faster has also become helpful because of AI, right? And then working smarter, right? Working smarter is where, like if I can have automatic anomaly detection, or, like let's say, especially in health where a lot of critical data is monitored, right? Like, for example, if you're a nonprofit that works with like newborns or, pregnant mothers, etc., it's important that you monitor data and like the health related metrics as well. And when certain metric talks, you need automated alerts that will notify the asha worker or the anganwadi worker there, right? So that is how you kind of like use AI to kind of to work smarter, right? Or automated document draft, for example, where every quarter, why should a human prepare like a donor report? Can we do that in an automated way, right? And similarly, knowing faster, right? Like AI really bridges the gap in disseminating information or bringing the data visibility gap. Where can you chat with your data? Like, let's say your field user might not have the literacy to, go through complex KPIs, reports, and dashboard, but can they, like ask in WhatsApp saying, hi, like what is the procedure when hemoglobin goes low for like a pregnant mother, right? Or like her how many injections for this thing, or education, let's say like how do I apply for the apprenticeship portal, right? There are so many knowledge that is there, and AI can really be really helpful to bridge the gap in knowing this faster, right? Once you know what is the outcome you want to achieve, AI really bridges the gap between idea to impact. So that is the gap that AI can be helpful in bridging, right? And how does that look in practice, right? So I'll just give some small example, right? Where let's say in the same example, right, like where there could be an attendance risk, right? Like where if a certain number of students are going below 80%, then having that anomaly detection system where these students might not complete 80%, so can we notify them, right? Or chatting with your data, where asking like, hey, what is the lowest placement rate, or etc., right? Like getting that data inside where you can talk to data is really where your simple language query is translated to SQL, and then it fetches your database, and then you're able to get it, right? And similarly, drafting of reports, right, where you can like generate like donor report on what was the completion or how many participants participated in your training programs in the last quarter, right? And auto drafting, and then which you can edit or make some edits and send it to your donor, right? And this is common for any of the stakeholder, right? And the beauty really is, right, like without your step one and two, without your model phase and align phase, you really can't get the data. Like for example, without a structured database, if I'm asking AI to generate like a Q2 funder progress report, where will it take the data from, right? It has multiple sources of truth. There is, repetitive information. So the even the AI will give you much more noise than signal, right? And that is why following step one and step two is really important. So we are almost towards the end of, like I'll give a couple more examples and I will be happy to hand it over to Parthiban as well. But I think this is really the framework that we wanted to show you today. And some examples, right, on how organization transform where from before to after, right? Like where attendance is being tracked from, like in one sheet, assessment in another sheet, follow-ups via WhatsApp messages, donor report rebuilt manually every year. And no one trusts the numbers, right? Because every sheet has different numbers. Who do you trust? Like what do you trust, right? And then you have a model phase, you define, retention indicators, assessment progression, follow-up cadence, everything, right? And then you have like a single source of data platform where you have entry, you have reviews, you have leadership visibility and donor reporting, right? And it increases the trust of the system because there is a single source of truth, right? And then AI kind of flags students, generates center level summaries, and enables natural language to access trends, right? So this is really the transformation that organizations need to go through in order to, like have take the best out of AI, right? And here also, right, the tool changed, but what made it really work is the sequence of the work, right? Similarly, like different examples, right? So maybe I'll just pick one example from here, and then I think I have one more poll to run. So one example is I'll take the, first example where there is fragmented data across different field teams, right? So there is every field team has different work, like different structures of Excel sheet, different, like, and no one knows what data is, being collected by the other location, etc. And having a single connected platform and having like single entry point really, like connects all of these databases together. And then because of that, there is a real-time program visibility for the leadership, and there is, even for the teams to track their progress, etc. Without manual consultation is what is the change, right? Similarly, for AI, like if you have structured data but insights is not there, right? Then building like an automation or an AI layer on top will really, help in building, automated summaries, anomalies, and workflow triggers, right? So this is what we wanted to show today, just as an idea or a perspective, right? And now I'll just invite Vishwa to run our second poll, which is on, where is your organization standing today, right? I think Vishwa, if you can just run the second poll, thank
Yeah.
you so much. Where, which challenge best describes your organization right now, right? Is it we're not clear on what data matters, our data is fragmented, or, like I think we have a system but figuring out AI, or we collect data, right? I think it's a multiple choice, right? So if your responses are scattered across different categories, you can just, like use it as well. So we'll just wait maybe for 30 seconds to for people to answer. A lot of organizations have a system trying to figure out where AI fits. I think would be happy to hear some questions during Q&A as well on how, we've been using AI in the systems work that we've been doing. Um, Awesome. So we have responses from most of them, right? And if you see here, I think I'll just share the result back to you, right? I think more than, I think, again, here, very less organizations are not clear on what data they want, right? So most organizations are in, subsequent stages where the data is fragmented, or we collect data, but it doesn't influence citizens, or we have a system and figuring out where AI fits, right? So that's where most organizations fit. And now that you know the challenge, right, how really this frameworks come into effect is where, if you identify the first one, right, like we're not clear what data matters, then it's a model failure, right? I think you need to first work on your model where you really streamline, ask the tough questions on, hey, what is the impact that I'm creating, how am I creating that, right? I think some are, like really model or fundamental questions, right? And if you would answer that, a data is fragmented, reporting to manual, or, teams collected but do not use it enough, right? It does not influence decisions, right? Then it is an aligned gap, right? Like where the system is not serving the purpose it was designed in the first place, right? There is a system, but the system doesn't serve me, right? So then I think it's a time for us to think about, hey, how can we make the system that makes serve us and serve our stakeholders better, right? So that's a good reflection point to think, right? And the last is, we're exploring where AI fits is more of a power gap, right? Where there is a system, there is structured data, there is everything, but really seeing how AI can maximize these efforts, right? I think it is an order from Excel to AI, and this is the order that we have been speaking about, right? And one reflection point for organizations to think about here is, is which part of, like the map is where your organization currently the most weakest, and how do you fix it, right? So I'm going to end with this reflections takeaways, right? Is, like across each of these framework, right? What decisions matters most, right? Or what data would help me take that decision? And where is that biggest source of truth problem, right? If you're not getting the truth with your systems, then what is the biggest issue there, right? Or where do that beautiful duplicate sheets or manual mergers confusion slow the work, and where is that dependency, right? Which workflow could benefit from automation or AI first, right? So this is like a thinking framework that you can use to see what next for your organization in terms of streamlining your data from Excel to AI, right? And yeah, I think the next step is really not to go jump into AI, but really fixing one part of the system that AI can later make it strong, right? I think this is what I would like to close out with, and I would love to, talk to you all again on Q&A. But for now, I'm just handing it over to Parthiban to, like I think take over from me, and also, share any kind of like the initiative that we are doing as part of Build for Impact. Yes, Pati, over to you.
Yeah, thanks Akshay and thanks Vishwa for setting up this things. Yeah, the knowing this slide, right? First of all, good evening everyone. Before I talk about Build for Impact initiative, I want to start a simple observation, like because in around 6 years across non-profit sector, so many organizations are doing incredible work across solving real problems in education, healthcare, livelihood, in so many other areas, right? But when we look at the system behind this work, many organizations are still managing their operation through spreadsheet, emails, even manual reporting. So this is where we find the gap. So the gap in the sense, the scale of the mission is one side, and supporting the system for that mission is one side. So this exactly what mean by bridging the gap. So that's where the Build for Impact program itself has been initiated. So we categorized three pillars of that gaps. So actually, next slide, go. Yeah. So first pillar is knowledge. So knowledge sharing itself, the most of the problem we are seeing across the non-profit sections. So what we have planned, like technology decisions can be confusing because there are so many tools, so many platforms, even many opinions, right? So through this initiative, we plan to organize live webinars like this one and other expert sessions, even publishing blogs. Other than that, where we can bring a community of non-profit leaders who can share their experiences. So the idea here is very simple to give non-profits a right frameworks to make confident to take technology decisions, because it's already working for another organization. In the sense, they can easily able to get insight and experience from them, right? So this is what we plan to do in the knowledge sharing gap. And second one, like, yeah, enabling access, because every organization know the value of good systems, but whenever the cost can be often become a barrier. So that's why we plan to have a enabling credits in Zoho for nonprofit program. We are using we are trying to onboarding for Zoho for nonprofit. Other than that, also helping the organization to adapting the tools for donor management, even program tracking, and automated impact reports kind of things. So basically, the goal is in this second pillar to remove the financial barrier so that it prevents non-profit team to adapting a good systems. So that one is the most important one because technology alone does not solve the problems. Because what really matter is how it has been implemented to adapted by the team. So through this initiative, right, EdZola plan to support the organizations, consulting, even need basis. We plan to do a, assessment and mentorship. Other than that, we plan to do a end-to-end system implementation, even team training and onboarding for users. Other than that, once we have a system in ready, right, we can also plan to do a ongoing support and maintenance. So this ensures, right, instead of act like a vendor, we like a partner who helps for all of the systems to implement, and it always solving the day-to-day operations. So this bringing all together, right, this all of these three pillars and be bridge the gap between your mission and systems. So this is the three pillar we have planned to solve using build for impact. And last slide, like the closing, because due to time constriction, I'll close it very short and sweet. So the build for impact goal is very simple: to help non-profits adopt the right technology in the practical and affordable way. So teams can spend less time management for especially working in the systems. Also they will have more time to creating the impact, because end of the day we are doing so many impact in social causes, right? So better we plan to have and save time for this kind of change makers, need to have so much time. So we plan to you guys are need to spend less time in managing the systems and need to have more time in creating the impact. So if this resonate with your organization, we would have very happy to support you throughout this Build for Impact program. And if you are not registered so far, you can just scan this QR code and you can register for this program. So yeah, thank you. Over to you, Akshay.
Thank you so much, Parthiban. And I think we will just open it. I think the 3 points is just, like I think knowledge, access, and community and implementation, right? I think these are the 3 points I think um, that Parthiban showed. While I think we have some time for questions, so if any of you have any questions, feel free to either unmute or put it in the chat as well. We'll be happy to answer them. In the meantime,
We have one question from Rohit MJ.
yes.
What the real users in the field often lacks is an awareness of the purpose of the data collection.
Yes, I mean, totally right. I think Rohit and me know this problem really well, where, like field users don't often understand the purpose of data collection, right? And I think it is important for as organizations to help them understand why the data literacy, right? And I think that is the whole piece on data literacy, where understanding or making the field users understand why this data is important, how that contributes, and also, making them data aware really brings the data culture in the organization, right? And I think it's only with their investment and time and training, I think the culture will change. And we've seen this in across organizations as well, where there is a strong practice of data, right? Like slowly their investment also increases, so they're more interested saying, okay, this time how many schools did we bring them from out of school to in school, or hey, how many lives did we save through this initiative, or how many, like for how many people did we, like enable a social protection scheme. And your field user is really at the core of all this, right? So they are like the superheroes, or like the stars of data. So how do we really give them that power or make them feel like a superpower, right? So I think that is where I think the we need to see this as a way to empower them as well. So I think yeah, but I think what Rohit says is more like a statement, I think. Do we have any this thing bridging the gap? Yes. How much data set is ideal to shift to AI automation in Zoho? I think Disha, if you can just explain what do you mean by a how much data set, right? Because it really based on the organization size and this thing, it'll be really helpful for you to, um, convert or, I think it really depends on the complexity of the organization. So if you can, I think we'll be happy to chat one-on-one with you as well to understand where your organization is today and how Zoho or any other tool can be helpful. How can error management handled in map journey, right? I think beautiful. Again, Nivedita, I think data, like quality data is also an important piece, right? So in terms of error, I think you mean things like, either a data cleaning perspective, data error or data anomaly. So that is one. And also in terms
Can
of,
I just add?
yes,
Yeah,
Nivedita.
hi, Nivedita here. Yeah. So I think, I mean, based on my experience, I worked for a foundation and we had many nonprofits. We had a standardized data collection tool rolled out. And I think the biggest challenge was like when the farmer data is being collected at large scale and very frequent, frequent data collection points. There were a lot of either manual errors or sometimes errors because the data or the timing of the person is not available, but the land's holding size or what practices are being adopted were coming as incorrect, and there was no time for the people who are in the block or the district or the state to really monitor, and then they would report the data which is incorrect, and then once some reporting milestone is being met, that time they would go back and recheck all the data, then data had to be sent back to the field users again for corrections. So I think that was a very big bottleneck in getting the right data to finally derive your reporting data and insights.
So, Nivedita, if I understand your question correctly, the data at entry point itself, right? You said
Correct.
farmers. So entry point itself is erroneous, right? So then I think we need to
Can
check.
be figured
Yeah.
out when you review the data, like the unit of land size is incorrect, or the input cost is put as incorrect because there's an extra zero or decimal, or there are things which you can figure out when you look at the data sometimes. And it was difficult for the people. Like, I think it's a part of that align, right? There were no clear people who would review data, or it was too much burden on one person to review all the field data to
Yeah.
figure out errors in a very frequent manner.
Yeah, and for your use case, right, if there is going to be a huge burden in data collection, like a huge error, possibility of error, I think we need to evaluate data collection verification at source, right? Validating data at the source, where, like notifying the user in some form saying, hey, this data looks incorrect. Like, do you want to check once again? Or, or giving like drop downs for units, or, like making currency field in a way that is really friendly for them rather than having like a big number value, which,
I think
sometimes.
those things were done, like you said, we had moved everything to drop downs, but they were selecting the incorrect drop down or those kind of things. But I think what I'm wondering is how can AI help? Like you said, if it can prompt the user or those kind of things, or it can low review the data on a daily basis and flag errors to the supervisor that these data sets which have come in look incorrect. Those kind of things I'm
Yes.
thinking.
So if we have a strong logic onto as a human, how am I identifying that error, right? If we have a bunch of error logs or bunch of error entries, and then we will know, okay, these are the kind of errors, categorizing that so that this AI can then monitor that on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, where it can flag the anomalies, it can, highlight users saying, it can like even put like something like a error score or, authenticity score so that, people who are then verifying can verify saying, okay, this looks, there is something wrong about this data and they can look, right? I think, yeah, there is possibility of all that.
And it can auto flag errors which go back to the field, like whatever. I think manually the process was done through the MIS systems. I think they can be automated through AI, I'm assuming.
Yes, yes, it can be done. Yes, you're 100% correct.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, Nivedita, for that question. Think do I don't think I think Chirian asked a question. I think I've already given him something over chat.
Yes.
I think for those who are curious about Zoho and AI, you should really check out Zoho MCP, which is like you can connect Zoho apps with Claude and you can use AI to chat with, like you can make entries into CRM or make entries into Creator or chat with your data using Zoho MCP. So I think that's a really cool thing that Zoho launched recently that you can check out. If there are no more questions, folks, I think do watch out for our upcoming communications as well. Our team is putting together a bunch of such webinars. So if you're interested to either speak or if you're interested on how we can further develop this program, this is the first of many webinars that we'll be doing as well. So my request is if you have any feedback on how this can be improved, please do share them across. We will be putting together a feedback form as well and sending it out along with the resources in this call over email. So if there's any way we could improve this, do let us know. And yeah, as Parthiban and Vishwa already said, our vision is to help nonprofits with technology and onboard them to tech and data solutions. So I think for that, I think we need all your support as well. Yeah, thank you so much. And it was lovely seeing you all here.